Tony Dunn. Ain't nothing to it but to do it, brother. Let's roll.
In a world where Carolina Panthers fans have an insatiable thirst for Panthers news and opinions, only one podcast roars ferociously. It's the C3 Panthers Podcast.
Did the Carolina Panthers just pull off the greatest offseason in franchise history? Is Dan Morgan the greatest GM in Panther history? And is he a dang bank robber who pulled off the heist of the century with Rasheed Walker? Man, we're telling you, this is going to be a great show tonight. You're listening to the C3 Panthers Podcast. My name's Tony Dunn, the longest running Panthers podcast around. Thanks for tuning in. I'm with my wheel. Well, not my wheel, man. My partner in crime, CK. How you doing, my friend?
Man, it's good to have another week of, some positive movement, as Panthers fans. I mean, I think we've been accustomed to the offseason being, one of the slower moments. And here we are. We're aggressive in free agency, opening ourselves up for whatever falls our way in the draft. And Tony, I couldn't tell you how excited I was that after we got off of the show, that next day we had the Walker signing, because I knew how important on that show that was to you. So to be able to come here to talk about how that is going to leave you feeling a lot better about the way this offseason is falling. But man, it's really becoming, you're starting to see the vision that they have, and that's super, super valuable when you think about the fact that they're putting so much effort into this defense, but they also aren't ignoring the offense. And so having this week to talk about that stuff, but I think we really have to start thinking about the draft a lot more intentionally now, because free agency is pretty much done at this stage. So we've got to start thinking about those young guys that are going to be the future of the Carolina Panthers. Man, I couldn't tell you a better place I'd rather be on a Tuesday night than chalking it up with you fellas. It's been a while since we had a couple of extra people on the, at least one extra person on the podcast, but man, happy to be here.
We've got a lot to talk about tonight. We'll look overall at free agency. And like you mentioned, we now can talk about the draft with actually some, like direction rather than just open-ended,
a little more predictable, if you will.
You have some tools, just like the team has, to work with. So we'll be looking at Panthers free agency overall. We'll be diving into some new signings that have happened since last week when we did the show. We're going to look at the Jaelan Phillips contract numbers and how gargantuan they are and how they look, and is that a overpay or a bold move? We'll be also looking at the NFC South and this arms race for number one. They're actually the odds are everybody is again fighting for number one. Like if you look at the odds today, it's the closest divisions odds wise. So we'll see if the Panthers got an edge or what the other teams were doing. And a fun way to end the show, we're going to be looking at the historic context of free agency and ranking not only free agency years overall, but looking at some of the hits and miss of the past and trying to see if we can see any parallels to that. So thanks everybody for tuning in to the longest running Panthers podcast. Make sure to smash the thumbs up button, subscribe, check us out on Apple and Spotify. Give us a rating. Thank you to everybody in the chat from VR Hope Dealer, Bees Knees, Harvey London. I saw, the inconspicuous BXC, and I saw my bastard son, White Chocolate Espresso, in there. Echo Forge Sounds. Thanks for tuning in. Guys, we got a good show tonight because we've got a new guest on the show tonight, and it is we are a podcast by fans for fans, or we're not football experts, but we're expert football fans. And a lot of time we talk about the show having a family vibe, CK. And tonight, I think we've merged two in one: fan, expert fan, and family. CK, I'm going to let you do the honors and bring in tonight's guest.
Hey, everybody, if we wanted to make you any more confused between having two Codys on the podcast to where my name is now CK. We've added another person here by the name of DK, who happens to be my cousin. If you guys couldn't tell by the features that are all very similar, but he's been a Panthers fan since since the early onset of the Panthers existence. So everybody, do me a favor, show him some love in the chat. This is DK. He can choose whether he wants to do DK or do Dan. But either way, it works for us.
Throw either one out there. Don't matter to me. It's a pleasure to be here, guys. I appreciate you having me. And again, definitely like being here with my bald bearded brethren,
I hear you. I tell you, one thing God did is if he didn't bless people with hair on the top of the head, he did always bless them with a beautifully shaped head. I feel
that's the truth right there. I always say bald and bearded is beautiful. That's the 3 B's of life, my friend.
So one of the things we like to do in the past is feature fans talking about how they became a Panther fan. And so I think this would be a good way to kind of just introduce yourself to people that are listening. DK, tell us about how you became a Panther fan and what that kind of, just give us some insight in that.
Well, I mean, it literally started the inaugural season, 1995. My dad, he entered a raffle back in the day, and he won a jersey. And at that point, I didn't really care. I didn't have a team. There wasn't anything that really mattered. I mean, I was young at that point. I was 10 years old. But he won this raffle, and it was a game worn in the inaugural season Frank Reich jersey. So I got that jersey, and the fact that it had the inaugural patch. It was a game worn jersey. I mean, it didn't mean a lot. All that stuff didn't mean a lot. But the fact that my dad won it, it was one of the first seasons. Ever since then, I've just literally been all about Carolina Panthers, bleeding black and blue since then. So, been to lots of games. I was a season ticket holder for years. And actually, I got my daughter started early. She's 7, and she's been to more NFL games than most human beings. So
that's awesome, man. I tell you this, I've gotten to the point where I don't like to go to games anymore. I'm like, dude, I'm exhausted. It's like it's just such an expense and time trek from where I live at. Mm-hmm. And it's just so enjoyable to watch it on the television. So I feel guilty about saying that as we do the longest running Panthers podcast. And then we do the post-game show after, and that just makes it more complicated when you go to the games. You're exhausted. And I feel like I don't watch the game as well. I'm there. It's the experience that hits you, but I don't remember the details of the game so much because I miss plays, I miss yardage, I miss this because I'm high-fiving people, yelling, whatever, dropping my beer or something like that. So, I'm glad to have you on the show. So let's go ahead and get started here with tonight's show. Tonight is the greatest offseason ever for the Carolina Panthers, and we got to start with the news that sparked this off. I guess, CK, you mentioned last week what we were talking about and how it was just on my heart so much about what the offensive line situation was. And to kind of recap that for listeners and for DK is that, Carolina invested so much. When Dan Morgan first came in, he's been a fixer, right? He's identified these things. He's sought aggressively to fix them in the offseason through free agency and the draft. And he came in, and the offensive line was atrocious. He went out and got Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt. Icky started to get better, right? And Moton is continued to play. We actually invested more money. I think we're, and I don't know if this is after this free agency season, the most money on our offensive line out of any team. And it led to the continued development of Bryce Young, the continued improvement of the team in wins. While the offense didn't explode, the team has incrementally and significantly gotten better since those improvements. Icky Ekemekwana was an important part, a first-round pick, and a guy that got a lot of flack in his second year, but has continued to develop at that left tackle, and it's an expensive position in free agency to identify or to address. And the injury, when he suffered that ruptured patella tendon in the last game of the season, threatened to kind of backtrack so much of the gains that had led to the momentum of the Carolina Panthers. And what I ultimately was kind of not struggling with, or just we knew is that we had signed Stone Forsythe, who was the worst tackle in the league last year. Yosh Ninjman retired. Carolina really felt like they were getting pigeonholed into trying to either suffer through with some sort of mediocre swing tackle or aggressively now have to pivot to the offensive line in the draft, potentially in the first round. But Dan Morgan pulled off the heist of the century. I don't know how the NFL allowed him to get away with this. He assigned offensive tackle Rasheed Walker to a 1-year, $10 million deal. Now, look, nobody is going to go, or you go around the league or whatever. I made this short that said is a top tier tackle. Not necessarily the best. He's not the best tackle. Actually, his stats are almost equivalent when you look at his PFF grades to Ickey, right? But the idea, he was the top rated offensive tackle in free agency. He did not get signed in those opening days, largely probably because he's looking for big time money. We'll be interested to see what those details were. But Dan Morgan addresses this left tackle position. And CK, I didn't know if they would have the ability to pull it off. When we were looking at the contract numbers of Jaelan Phillips last week, how did they do this? Dan Morgan, but he said, I'm not going to let this derail our season right away. And I'm very pumped about this move.
Yeah, it's a big move, and it's not just a big move because it was a position of need. Here's the reason this was such a smart decision, and the fact that we pulled it off was so valuable. If we went into this draft without having a left tackle, we would be forced to use probably a left tackle early on in the draft, and the problem then becomes, how do you handle that when Ickey's healthy? Are we planning on just having two first round, left tackles that we're going to have on the roster? So you risk the long-term, benefit of the organization, because ideally what you're looking at is you're going to hope that you can sign Ickey to a longer-term deal if he can come back and show himself to be a value to the team. But this signing allows that to actually be a potential outcome. And we don't have to think so. We don't have to be so single-minded about how the draft is going to go, because we know this is at least a Band-Aid, a bridge to the eventual outcome of what will be Ickey's return. And you're not worried. Now you can start to draft another position of need. Right now, some might argue our biggest position of need might be our safety position at this stage now. So I mean, it really does open up the board a bit, or maybe even a center position. So I mean, I think this gives us a little bit more along the lines of a security blanket going into the draft without feeling so forced to try to reach for a guy that maybe you don't value in the first round.
Dave Gettleman, famous.
I do want to point something out there, CK, because you talk about Ickey, right? Talk about the injury. What I like about this Rasheed Walker signing is this man has played 48 out of the 52 games.
Yeah.
I mean, he's dependable. So we got somebody injured. We need somebody who's going to be able to come in there and actually play games, who's going to be a body on the field.
Yeah. I mean, and a good one too, right?
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, DK. What do you think about, and just I was going to follow up with CK's point, is that Dave Gettleman always famously said, is you use free agency to set up the draft so you're not pigeonholed in. Mm-hmm. And we were feeling like that last week. Now, CK, the draft board is wide open. But DK, what do you think about the 1-year deal, right? Because some of the comments, or at least the people are talking about, is what kind of top tier tackle is going to take a 1-year deal? And to me, this is somehow a master class. I think there's some insight into like the Ickey timeline. Mm-hmm. What do you think the 1-year deal? Do you guys have any thoughts on what that could signify and how maybe Dan Morgan sold that to Rasheed Walker?
Well, I think, honestly, if you want to be real, it gives Walker an opportunity to increase his value while being, I mean, I don't mean it to sound that way, but a fill-in, a really good one. And
stopgap.
Yeah, in a sense, but one that again, he's going to really put in the effort because he knows that 1-year deal, he's back out, free agency. He's essentially putting himself in the position to make more money.
I think this does a couple of things for us in addition to just giving us a Band-Aid. And that is this year is Icky's 5th-year option, right? At the end of this year, we have to make a choice on what we're doing with Icky. Well, now if Walker outplays his contract or plays even up to what he signed for, and he's a serviceable left tackle, well, now we have leverage in a negotiation, right? We have Walker, we have now Icky. We can choose between who we want. We don't need to overpay somebody for the position if both of them are sufficient sufficient resources to be able to lean on that left side, that blind side for Bryce. We don't want to go backwards on our offensive line. Obviously, that's number one. But I also think this allows us to go into next year with a little bit more confidence as well. And White Chocolate, has a pretty good point because we've been saying Icky might be better off on the interior as well. And I believe this is the last year of Damian Lewis's contract too. And so if for whatever reason we can't bring him back, you could slide Icky to the interior and see how that goes. But I don't know. I think this just opens up. Not only does it help us, ensure that this season we have the left tackle spot shored up, but it also ensures that we're not going into next season just with no idea of what we're doing. Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't think we're going to be comfortable signing Icky to a long-term contract if he doesn't play a single snap this year.
No, not at all. And I think you kind of said leverage, use the term leverage. That kind of makes it like business cutthroat. But I think there might be something to this that has like good intentions for all players involved here.
Sure.
Is that somehow you had to tell this guy, Rasheed Walker, who's ranked the number 1 tackle, who's 26 years old, by the way, to take a deal that is a 1 year, you're going to get paid. But to me, there has to be some sort of handshake promises about the potential future he has with the team as they're continuing to adjust and work through the cap. So I think that I don't think Rasheed Walker would take this deal here with Carolina if he didn't see a potential to not only like grow his stock, like DK said, grow, his value, but to maybe capitalize that in Carolina when they have more opportunity to spend at that position. And I think that there I won't say an assurance that we're going to bring you back, but I also think that this is a good nod to Akem Ekwonu as well, because Ekwonu's injury is so unfortunate timing in that 5th-year option. Like you said, CK, you can't sign him to a long-term deal based on his performance from pre-injury, where there still was some kind of questions about, not questions, but it was
inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, and he was he played better than average, right? So I think what you're going to be able to do is bring Icky back in a friendlier way and not have to just say, sorry, bud, good luck to you. And I almost wonder is that while Kev said is that we can finally slide him inside, which that could be a possibility. I wonder if Icky could ever, and I know he hasn't played right tackle in his history, but you have to at some point be thinking about life after Taylor Moton too. And if you could have Rasheed Walker and Icky somehow fit into that line together, I think this works out tremendously for the Carolina Panthers. To me, this is when I thought that when I put the Carolina Panthers free agency over the moon this year, because the other guys were targeted like defense, and we'll talk about actually it's a good time to talk about those other moves. But you had this one glaring now problem with all the excitement and how he pulled this off without having to do it in the draft. When we walked into free agency, guys, the Panthers had at one point $12 million. Then they projected it to be $35 million. And then somehow they spent $170 million on the first day of free agency. That comes with a couple of moves, I believe. A'Shawn Robinson being released. Derek Brown restructure was a big deal. And I don't know if anybody else restructured. I have to look that up. But Here's an overall look at the Carolina Panthers. Here's some numbers for you. Jaelan Phillips, 4 years, $120 million. 3 years, $45 million. Devin Lloyd. This has been the most celebrated pick among the league, that the Carolina Panthers got the number one linebacker prospect. So if you think about this, is that Devin Lloyd, number one linebacker prospect, Rasheed Walker, number one offensive tackle free agent, ranking, Jaelan Phillips, top 5. But they got Devin Lloyd for about $5 million less than people thought they were going to get. Rasheed Walker, we just talked about that signing. He did what he said by making the quarterback room younger and cheaper with Kenny Pickett. Oh, yeah. Luke Fortner, what a deal here, is a veteran who has played very well as of late, too. Kind of like a resurgence in his career for a dirt cheap deal. Stone Forsythe, we don't need to talk about him. A body, but you're going to need a guy. You're going to need a guy like that, right, DK? At some point in this season, somebody's going to miss some snaps, and I don't care if he's stunk or not. He's played before.
Yep. I mean, he can come in there. I mean, it's football. People are going to go down. And let's be honest, he's not bad. He's not horrible.
Well, he was as a starter, but, I was talking to my buddy who's a Raiders fan, and he said that offensive line just completely stunk. And it was Luke Carroll. I think Pete Carroll's son was the coach, and he said he was just terrible. I don't know. He wasn't great, but look, he's got a connection to Dave Canales and Dan Morgan. Stone Forsythe, drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. All right, well, we're going to be talking about John Metchie. A lot of people were throwing this name out, the Bama Connection there. We brought back David Moore. Isaiah Simmons, I know CK is going to want to talk about that. Rochelle, Gibson, these are guys I don't know their names. Evans, I know Claude Charles. He played with the Panthers last year and had some good things. And one other that was not on that list, the Carolina Panthers bring back Sam Martin. So you guys pick one thing you want to talk about other than John Metchie, because we have a segment of that. CK, you can open up with IS if you want.
Yeah. So, I have to be the residential Clemson fan for a moment. We have, last year, the Isaiah Simmons signing, in the moment, I think it was just it was all right. It was just like a body that needed to replace some injuries and things like that. But the upside is certainly worth getting at least a little excited about. But man, I tell you what, watching him, even in that Rams game, he made such an incredible impact on that special teams. I think the dude still has something to prove. And this could be our nesting. So I don't know if you guys remember when we put Reddick, when we had Reddick on the team. The reason Reddick came to us was because the Cardinals drafted Isaiah Simmons. And so we got we put Reddick on the team, and he was able to actually have a fantastic season that set him up for an incredible payday with the Eagles. But the thing is he didn't do well until he came to Carolina, or until he was able to start playing a position that was able to be. He wasn't being utilized the right way.
No, they had him at middle linebacker, I think, at one point.
And so now we have another opportunity with Isaiah Simmons to allow him to come in here and develop and potentially be a guy who's able to contribute at a high level. I think this is an underrated signing. I know a lot of people are going to overlook it because he's been largely considered a bust from where he was drafted so highly in the NFL. But I think this guy coming in here on a very reasonable deal, I think having the athleticism this dude has, he could really have an impact on this team if we allow him to. But I think this is. I was saying this to the boys before we started the show. Halfway through the year, I think that we're going to look back on this signing, and Isaiah Simmons is going to be a shining light, a bright spot on the offseason, in addition to many of these other players. But Isaiah Simmons coming back, I think, is going to be big for us in the long term.
DK, your thoughts on this? Just some of these names that we've mentioned that we haven't talked about yet.
Dude, I'm going to talk about Kenny Pickett.
Okay, let's talk about the gloved quarterback and the history of gloved quarterbacks. I think we've
tiny
had
tiny hands at all.
Three gloved quarterbacks in our team history,
dude. But look. I mean, we let's be honest. We needed a good backup. I mean, again, Dalton has come in with some veteran presence, and he's been there to teach Bryce some stuff. But at some point, you got to remember, Andy Dalton's 38 years old. He's not going to have the athletic profile that some of these guys do. And I think Kenny Pickett brings a similar athletic profile to what Bryce Young has. And I think that meshes well with what we're trying to do. I mean, his ability to escape pressure with his legs, again, very similar to Bryce Young. So if, and God forbid I say it, something does happen to Bryce, we don't have to change the system. I think the system can still work with both these guys. I like this because it's also a really low cost guy to bring in that, I mean, what do they pay him? I think like 7.5 million, 4 million guaranteed, something like that. It's not like it's a high risk, low risk. Yeah. Low risk, high value move. And I love it. I think he actually played and won his ACC championship in Bank of America Stadium. So it's kind of like a little familiarity, homecoming for him. So I'm all about this Kenny Pickett. I mean, I know he hadn't done the best in his career, but as a backup, I'm stoked. I love that.
I love this take. I love this take, DK, because I think it's just so easy for the internet and fans to shit on, players that just haven't excelled or ultimately succeeded in the league. Yep. I think this is what Dan Morgan first, when he said what he was going to do in free agency, he said there was no, looking back at it, CK, there was no coach speak, we're like trying to read into all these words. He said exactly what he was going to do. He's like, we got to get better. We got to get better at the pass rush. We want to get better at the middle linebacker and, more stable there and like kind of have a field general, high IQ guy, big, like this. And then he said, we want to get younger and cheaper at the backup quarterback. And he went and did it. Now, look, nobody's got to love Kenny Pickett as a player, right? Nobody's asking Kenny Pickett to start, right? But I do like what you're talking about, DK, in that this is what a backup quarterback's supposed to be.
Bingo.
In a way, is like Andy Dalton is too cooked, right? He's like his shoulder was cooked last year.
Yep.
He was not that guy that was just 2 years ago that threw 50 passes in Seattle or whatever he did. It was a real drop off visually in those moments that he played last year. You got to make it worth it for that guy to be around, right? In a sense. And I think like Pickett, look, it's just the fact is that he's had enough playing time.
Oh yeah.
In his past to come in and navigate.
Yep.
You had two options here. You get a guy, three options. You keep an old hat like Andy Dalton around. You go and get a nobody that we're always cycling in that third quarterback position, or you go draft, you waste a draft pick. I always think a third round draft pick or fourth round draft pick on a QB that you really don't ever think has a fit, but you're like, we're drafting a backup.
Yeah.
I think that's stupid. I don't like that.
Waste of a pick.
Yeah, I agree, because you can get a contributor at other positions at that spot. But then you get a guy like Pickett who was overdrafted, just not a starter, not a star or a starter. In some ways, I mean, we're going to be talking about important free agents in the history of football or Panthers football, but Jake Delhomme wasn't Jake Delhomme had a long road. I'm not saying that, but no one wants Kenny Pickett playing, but I think this is way better than drafting a rookie in the fourth or something. So I like this. I like that take. Let's see. Anybody else that I want to talk about before we move on? How about we just move on? Well, the Sam Martin deal, CK, we've always this cycling of punters in our team history, but it's nice to see one brought back.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've actually brought back a punter out of free agency. I mean, we've gone through Andy Lee, Johnny Hecker, Brad Nordman back in the day.
There's been a couple more that we're not even thinking.
Oh,
of,
dude,
probably.
well, there was a good stretch where we felt like we had a really good punter, and we just like the next year he was not on anybody's team. It was
or
like
we just felt like we were not going to spend the money there at all.
I mean,
we were like, nah, we'll just find another.
Yeah,
Johnny
I mean, and this is reasonable, right? 2 years, $5 million. That does feel a little odd that the punter's getting paid more than you're paying like an Isaiah
Coker?
Simmons, a Jaelan Coker.
I don't know if that's true. I don't. Jaelan Coker might get a little bit more.
Yeah, to me, it feels a little odd to have it be $5 million. But at the same time, in the grand scheme of all the punters in the NFL, it's a pretty reasonable plan, pretty reasonable contract. I'm fine with it. I'm glad to have the consistency. I think our special teams had some positives last year, and Sam Martin he's been a consistent performer for us since letting go of Johnny Hecker 2 years ago. So. I'm happy that he's back just so we can keep that consistency on that side of things. I hope we don't see him very much, but I'm glad he's back.
Thank you, Vegas Panthers Drew, for your $5 C3 super chat. He says, don't mind the Isaiah Simmons signing, but basically Sam Franklin impact on special teams. Kenny Pickett sucks. I'd rather have a promising rookie. I think that, look, I can understand, again, like I said, is that if you're not impressed with Kenny Pickett, I'm not trying to convince you of that. I will point out that he's the third gloved quarterback from David Carr to Teddy Bridgewater to now Kenny Pickett, all gloved wearing quarterbacks, right? And that always goes to the tiny hands or this or that, fumbling issues. I think, though, if you look at if we tried to just look at a couple of things here when it comes to the Rasheed Wall signing and Kenny Pickett, is like, can you find some sort of parallel between the two players? I think is that, look, the Panthers will be asked, like, I mean, in one way, we'll ask this a little later in the show, but it's like, they don't want to ruin, like, one injury to ruin this season. And I think that if you drafted a promising rookie and then you use a draft pick there, right? So you risk maybe a contributor in some other aspect or something that could have a more long-term value. But if something does go wrong, right, is that if all of these moves and all of this, and we're in Bryce Young's 5th-year option and the offensive line sucks, we're just going to we're not going to know what to do. It's like, what the same question over and over again with Bryce. Is he the future? Is he not? And we're going to just be exhausted by it. And then on the other hand is you have what you're really vying in this division. You're competitively getting better, and you don't want to. I mean, I would hate to see a 3 or 4 game injury for maybe a Bryce Young, or even, heaven forbid, something worse, and the entire season just be like, well, we're back to drafting number one. So I really think there was, I think they're probably thinking about those things too. And it might not be off the table to draft a guy in the 6th or 7th round that is that rookie quarterback that could be the third, and maybe Kenny Pickett doesn't make the team.
I mean, you got to think about it like this, though. I mean, what are the chances of somebody finding a Brock Purdy, right? What are the chances of that? And maybe we draft someone like that and have a competition with Pickett. But again, you can't bet at all on finding a Brock Purdy, come in on injury, take you to the championship games. I mean, you can't bet on that. At least you got somebody with starting experience. At least you got somebody who's done it, so that again, if you got a rookie, you get him in the last round. Who cares? Again, they can build, they can grow, and you're not relying on them if something like you said happens to Bryce.
Kev said to rather use a 6th rounder for Fields. Oh gosh, we got to stay away from Fields. I wanted us to draft Fields that year. He was traded just yesterday, I think, to
the Chiefs,
to Kansas City Chiefs. Going back to another though is when we said that Dan Morgan said what he meant and did what he said in this, is one of the things that is the Panthers have invested a top draft pick in wide receiver 2 years in a row. there's only so much money to go around. I don't think they want to give up on XL. They feel comfortable with. They're excited about the rookie of the year and Ted McMillan and Jalen Coker. They got it as a steal right now, because he's on that tender, right? So he's playing for cheap, and we'll see what there. But I don't think they had the ammunition to go and do something big here. Now, one of the things that Dan Morgan said was, he said, we want to get more run after catchability. And for you guys know is that John Metchie III has been signed. The Carolina Panthers signed him. He has bounced around. Look, Metchie is really, it's about the Bama connection here. He's been reunited with Bryce Young. He had a star season with Bryce where he had, let me see his stats were in Alabama in 2021. He had 96 catches, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So him and Bryce have a history together. John Metchie's had a remarkable story in his football journey, one of resilience, and where he transitioned from a devastating medical diagnosis to potentially becoming an asset for the Carolina Panthers that could find some time and some work if him, and maybe it's just like, let's not forget about Jimmy Horn Jr. just yet here. But these are the kind of players that you're looking for. Maybe I think Jimmy Horn Jr. might have more downfield explosiveness. Metchie, though, does bring a interesting run after the catch ability and very consistent hands. But one of the reasons that he's kind of bounced around to this point is he was drafted in 2022 in the second round by the Houston Texans, but he was subsequently diagnosed with acute promyelocytic leukemia, APL. He announced in 2022 he would miss his rookie campaign and focus on his recovery. But fortunately, this is a highly curable form of leukemia, which he clearly has beaten or is in remission, or whatever the right terminology health-wise is. He spent the entirety of 2022 on the non-football illness list, completing his treatment in late September that year. He came back for the Texans in 2023. His first game was against the Indianapolis Colts. He finished his season with 16 catches, 158 yards. In 2024, his role expanded a little bit. Caught his first touchdown against the Detroit Lions. But let's see, he was honored with the Ed Block Courage Award and George Hollis Award for overcoming extreme adversity. I like that. 2025 year was his trade year, where he spent time with the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Jets. But in 2025, he was able to record 29 receptions for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns.
He showed some promise.
He did. And that is, when I looked at the highlights, it was all Jets, right? And all I saw was he would catch, and he did something different than a lot of players do. As soon as he caught the ball, he was immediately turning upfield. There's like no dash. This is like it. You could see that every catch led to additional yards. So really, this is Metchie signed here's the details. He signed a 1-year, $1.9 million contract with the Carolina Panthers, and it's seen as a strategic reunion between him and Bryce. Guys, what do you think about the wide receiver room? Let's just talk about that in general. Not so much as we have no idea how this will shake out for guys like Jimmy Horn, like Bryson Tremaine was brought back. John Metchie was added. David Moore was brought back, who is the veteran of the group. You have XL, who has to try to rebound from a sophomore slump. Jalen Coker, who showed promise. What do you guys think about Carolina and how they had to handle free agency with the wide receiver group?
I'll start with, I think this is a great decision. I think you are doing what you can to give Bryce receivers that he already understands their timing, he already has that connection with. I think that's important. When last year it felt like there were a few times when that connection wasn't there with anybody not named T-Mac or Jalen Coker in the playoffs. I think it's an interesting signing because it does make us go into the it never fails during training camp that we get an injury to a wide receiver of some capacity. And I think having a few names in the on the bench that would not normally be considered starters in the league right now. Metchie being probably on that list of wide receivers. I think it allows the Panthers to go into this season with options. We're not going to be handcuffed to the idea of holding on to Xavier Legette if he's not able to come in and perform at a high level in the training camp. I know that's not what White Chocolate wants to see, but or here. I don't think they're going to be ready to let Horn go from the wings. I think they see some promise out of him. So I think you're more likely to let some of these other veteran presence go, such as Xavier Legette or a David Moore, if Metchie can come in and outperform any of these guys. But it doesn't handcuff us. So I do like our wide receiver room. I think we always say this. We have for like the past 6 years. Like, we have one of the best wide receiver rooms that we've ever had in Panthers. And then it always ends up being like somehow the worst. This year was probably the first time that it actually worked out in our favor to a degree. But getting rid of Thielen and then having Hunter Renfrow not really do much of anything last year makes me a little uncertain about how to feel about this wide receiver room. Because I don't want to get too hype, but I'm very happy to see that we have a depth piece there, and Metchie is a solid signing. With there being a potential that he doesn't make the team.
I'll be honest with you. I'm going to be giving a little bit of a hot take here. I'm all out on Legette. I'm out. Look, I had a lot of expectations for this man, but it's not. I don't think his raw talent. It's he gets out there and the pressure, he cannot perform under pressure. And we've seen this time and time again, drops that literally cost games. Like, I mean, it's just, I don't see him. I mean, to me, he's out on my top 5 of our wide receivers at this point. I'd put, Coker, Tet, of course. I'd even put Metchie. I'd put Horn. I mean, I'm putting these guys ahead of him in my book again, just because he has never shown the potential that he came into this league with. And at this point, will he? Like that's kind of where I'm at. I'm out on him, man. I think this right here shows that maybe the coaching staff might feel the same way in a sense. I mean, they're trying to get some people in there in case it does go exactly the way I'm telling you, I'm predicting that it's going to go.
Yeah. I think, and to go back, I mean, I am absolutely hoping that he can turn it around and he can have a comeback season, because I have liked XL since we drafted him that first round 2 years ago. I thought that the pure athleticism that I felt like he could overcome any, maybe football things that he's going to learn as he plays, right? It just doesn't feel like things have connected. And I think, to people's point, it doesn't. I don't know that it's all Excel. I think there could be a part of it that it's just something not connecting with him and Bryce.
Fit, maybe, yeah.
But I do hope that he's able to come into this situation and actually do something that we don't expect him to do, and that show that he belongs in this league. I really hope that. I certainly, like, it's just, I think he's a good thing for the brand of the Carolina Panthers, especially coming from from South Carolina. I think that's going to be huge when you're talking about letting these guys be fans of the Panthers while playing for these local colleges, with the potential hope that they're going to be drafted by the Panthers. I wanted to work out so bad. I'm not holding my breath on it right now.
I mean, I'm hopeful with you. I'm hopeful with you. We'll see.
I think it's important to remember too is that the way that the NFL, or at least the fan version of the NFL, and even just the reality, the not for long league, the immediacy of production is a big deal, right? And especially when you're a first round pick. But I think it's also important to note is that he was viewed as a project player, a guy in South Carolina who had 1 year where he didn't have a lot of tape where he was good. Like, he had a 1 year that showed that he could play, right? Then the Carolina Panthers moved up into that 32nd spot. And maybe you in some ways you can look at that. I think it was an overdraft in a sense, as you could have gotten him later. But some people, or the argument is that for a project player and the development timeline, potentially that 5th-year option could be a good thing, right? And I think that the Carolina Panthers, or at least one thing I try to look at with XL is that while he played kind of well his first year, and I thought he didn't step forward in his second year, right? There's a lot of sophomore slump stories out there, but I'm trying to remind myself that the expectations and that immediacy that we want might not always be the development of a player and their trajectory. Now, what happens sometimes, though, is you accelerate those timelines by pushing more pressure and more need and more dependency on a player. So, the Carolina Panthers kind of needed XL and so much. Coker, particularly with Coker's injury, they needed him to progress faster than maybe they wanted his timeline to be. I think this is that if we just look at some clues when it comes to XL, is that Carolina didn't go out and do something aggressive in free agency to where they thought, man, we can manage this room with the growing talent of Tetairoa McMillan, what we think could be a solid player in Jalen Coker, right, on a cheap deal. And maybe, and look, and somebody mentioned, Bees Knees mentioned Bryson Tremaine, who's been in the league for 3 years now. And is made some big damn plays and probably is a more polished player than XL at the moment. What I think is maybe, and hopefully what we're trying to do is allow XL to find and thrive into a role rather than just banging it in like you have to be this guy. You got to be the number 2. You got to start. Now, that could all change when we get to the draft and we say, oh, man, what if the Panthers went out and picked a wide receiver? That might change our narrative on that. So I'm trying to think of this as just like, wow, this is year 3. By the end of this season, we'll have, the Panthers will have a better trajectory. They even have another year before they have to make any big decision. And we'll see if his role grows or if it diminishes and somebody else can be. But I think a good sign of this is that the Panthers didn't feel like that wide receiver room needed to be addressed significantly. I mean, you brought back David Moore and Metchie, and we like Bryson Tremaine and we like Jalen Coker, and we'll rock. And hopefully that'll be enough. Guys, it is March Madness time is back, folks. Man, I haven't watched a ton of college basketball, but if you are from North Carolina, you got to love your college basketball. And March is one of the greatest sports months of the year in some ways. You get NFL free agency, you get March Madness. We're starting to get into NBA and NHL playoffs are approaching in a sense. And if you want to make some loot and have some fun watching March Madness, Underdog Fantasy is the place to do it. Underdog is the place where you can get in on that action and take advantage of some of these March Madness upsets, right? And really make some cash. If you get your picks right on Underdog, you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. Right now, you can go to Underdog, and there are player projections for Thursday night. You got Carlos Boozer's son at Duke, who you could go higher or lower on at 39.5 points, rebounds, and assists on Thursday night. You've got Thornton from OSU, from Ohio State University playing TCU, points, rebounds, and assists, 29.5. These are some popular picks right now. You can also get involved in hockey and NBA. Guys, Underdog Fantasy is a way to take your sports knowledge, have some fun, and make some loot. Download the app today and use the promo code C3P to score $50 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code C3P. Underdog, make picks, win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, Virginia, and present in state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800 My Reset or 1-800-GAMBLER, or visit www.ncpgambling.org. AZ, if you're in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Watch your gambling problems, folks. You don't want to do that. And thank you, lawyers, for that winded moment each week that I have to do the disclaimer there. Go to Underdog. Make sure you play that promo code C3P. Help the podcast continue to pay the bills. I want to do this before we move on from just Carolina Panthers free agency. I got one question for you guys. Is after we look at this free agency right here, is this a win now off season or build it right off season for the Carolina Panthers?
If I'm being honest, I don't like the question. I think it's both. I think this is a matter of, if it was only a build it for the future, or let me rephrase, if it was just a win now, I think we would be, what's the best way to describe it? I think if it was a win now situation, I think we would be, we wouldn't be signing guys to 3-year deals, right? I think we'd be trading people for big players. We'd be in those conversations of getting guys that are on the market. Like we'd actually be in the Max Crosby conversations and stuff like that, right? But I think they're trying to build it right, but they're also understanding like we weren't that far away. You know, when you think about where we were last year, right? I mean, we still have some work to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not naive in believing that we were on the verge of being a playoff contender like perennially. But I think that I think these moves were ultimately showing me that they intend on this year being a winning year, but they're not selling the farm to make this a playoff, like a Super Bowl push, which they shouldn't, to be fair.
DK, win now, build it right, or both, as CK said?
I mean, I can see where he's coming from. I mean, a lot of these moves show that we do believe not just in right now, but the future. I mean, we signed in like the 4-year Jaelan deal. I mean, that's setting him up for the foreseeable future. I think it is a little bit there is some win now in it, though. I think we're bringing people in, and we're not expecting to do worse than what we did. I mean, it's not like it's a full, let's set it up for the future. I mean, we're setting ourselves up to win, and the goal is going to be to win. We're not bringing these guys in. We're not bringing some of the top free agents at certain positions in here to only build for the future.
Only build for the future, or only build for 1 year too, right?
Yeah,
there is a balance there.
I think you're right. I think, and that's why I see where he's coming from. I think there's maybe maybe I'm going to lean more towards win in the near future. Maybe not right now, but win in the near future. And I think that's the expectation. That's my opinion.
And additionally, keep in mind, like, we built this and we still have all of our draft picks.
True.
And why that's valuable is if you guys look at what our draft picks did last year, like every one of them started in like 10 games or more, if I'm not mistaken.
True.
Like, I don't remember a draft class as Panthers fans where we can say that all of our draft picks impacted our team in some capacity. And sometimes they were negative, right? You know, you think about the ransom hit on Shug that, cost us 15 yards and put them well within the field goal range to win that game when we could have shored up the NFC South. But then the very next game, he comes in and wins that Rams game with that, I believe it was the Rams game, with that interception of, no, it wasn't that one. It was the Baker Mayfield interception. Now, granted, it wasn't like a crazy good play that he had. Baker just threw the ball up into no man's land. But, every one of these guys had to, contributed. All of them also contributed to some losses too. But I'm excited because we finished this free agency period, even though we're still technically in it. We finished this free agency period without giving up any of our draft picks, and we have that knowing how well Dave has, been drafting. Even if you don't think that he's gotten superstars yet outside of T-Mac, he's drafted really well, and he's gotten contributors on this team with both of his draft classes.
And Tony, I'll say this, something right there. Sean saying definitely to win our division. That's going to bring up a solid point because our division isn't sitting still. At the end of last year, the Falcons, the Saints actually looked like the best teams in the division. And we're going to have to think about that. I mean, that's going to be the people that we're going to I mean, I'll be honest. The Bucs probably on a downward slope. Mike Evans gone. They may not be the top contenders that they have been.
Dean.
Yeah, I mean, I think now the Saints and the Falcons are going to be something that we need to think about. So we kind of have to. They're young teams with lots of talent. And
Shug is not. He doesn't look like. For a rookie, he did not look like a rookie.
He was poised, and it was beautiful.
We said it last year, and you hit the nail on the head with that assessment, DK. We said it last year. Towards the end, we couldn't put it together. Neither the Bucs nor the Panthers looked like they deserved to win the division. Quite honestly, Ed, to your point, it looked like the Falcons and the Saints were the best teams in the NFC South, and they were already eliminated from playoffs by that time. It was wild. And here's the thing: we got to go into this. We had to have done what we did this offseason, because if we stood still, you're absolutely right. They would have the moves that they were going to make were going to put them ahead of us. Now, I think there's still a lot of question marks on what's going on with James Pierce Jr. and all that stuff with his situation or what have you. But if they let Stephon Diggs continue to play through his legal troubles last year, I'm anticipating the league will let James Pierce Jr. do that again this year. So I think the Falcons have geared up, and I don't think that they've lost enough to be worried, to believe that they're not going to be able to come in and be a contender next year. We've got to keep that in mind. And so that's what this offseason has done for us, in my opinion.
I think that, like you said, is you don't like the question, as maybe we don't like the I guess the historic answers to that question, or win now at all costs, right? Or punt for the future, right? Like that's kind of been the historic look at that type of debate question. Now, what I think is that middle of the road. I do think it is a win now. I don't think it's win the Super Bowl at all costs now, but I think this is like, why not now? Why not? At what point are we no longer rebuilding? And at what point are we really trying to, as they did, make our mark, leave our mark, that they did maybe prematurely last year with that saying, is that, I mean, at some point is you got to take what you have in that moment and try to capitalize on it. And I think that the Panthers found themselves in a place where, look, is that it's kind of put up or shut up with Bryce Young and Dave Canales, in that, like, stop this debate of we don't have the tools, we don't have this, we don't have that. Mm-hmm. At what point do the Carolina Panthers, start to say this, our time could be now? Now, what does that mean? Does that mean it's Super Bowl or bust? I don't think anybody believes that. I think Dan Morgan said in the past is like, we're trying to make the playoffs every year. And what we saw is that we backed into the playoffs last year. We had some pieces and some things that show some promise, but like, why wait and strike at this? And it's time to strike. So I think it is like, hey, we're trying to win the division. We're trying to make a playoff push. You might not win the Super Bowl, but like, we're sure as hell going to try. Mm-hmm. So I think what's felt different about this free agency, though, or this moment, and that brings up a question about that, is ultimately is that in the past, the Carolina Panthers haven't operated like this in free agency, right? Is you haven't seen them chase the blue chip player. You haven't really seen them spend big premium dollars. They've been conservative. They've tried to, I guess, be draft reliant. They're hesitant. They've been hesitant to pay top market deals. And most of their big moves have been on like value plays in the past or re-signing somebody.
Yep.
And this offseason feels a little different because it kind of starts to align with that timeline of like, well, we got that rookie quarterback. We're on that rookie deal. The other people in the division is like, the division is, you're not fighting a juggernaut necessarily. And Bryce, like, this isn't patchwork. It's not panic. It's not panic. And like you said, CK is like all or nothing. And I think to kind of show that they're trying to win now and build for the future is they paid, and we'll talk about this. We'll move on to this Jaelan Phillips, the big deal. He's 26 years old. Now, Devin Lloyd, 27, Rasheed Walker. I mean, I know it's a 1-year deal, 26. They're not just getting these 1-year warriors on a big deal superstar squadding it up. And a lot of people believe that, and I think Panther fans have been ecstatic about this offseason. But look, I mean, as people around the league are talking about the Carolina Panthers being one of the most improved teams in free agency, and you never win the Super Bowl in March, but you certainly can make yourself better in free agency. I think the Panthers have done that. How about this? Let's do this. Before we're going to talk Jaelan Phillips contract real quick, but before we do that, let's go ahead and I think we got a couple of calls to get to. So let's take some of those listener calls. The number is 252-228-5098. That's 252-228-5098. Jump into the cat calls. We'd like to know your thoughts on win now, build for the future, both Jaelan Phillips overpay or solid deal, an aggressive move, bold pay, should we say. And is Dan Morgan the GM of the best GM the Panthers have had? And is he really just doing a master class when it comes to this offseason? Let's take your calls now.
So what are your thoughts on catcalling?
Yeah, it's pretty. You shouldn't do that to somebody.
And how did that make you feel?
Very uncomfortable.
So how do you think catcalling makes the person feel?
It feels good, like.
Who's that cat sitting in the back corner with his face buried in his nose? Who's that kid that can use one?
CK, Tony Dunn, the C3 Legion. What up, y'all? It's the Hope Dealer checking in real quick. Happy Tuesday to everybody out there. So check this out. So, of course, we've been talking about Jaelan Phillips, right? 26 years old, coming from Vic Fangio's system. So think about this for a second, y'all. He is the player that's going to run you to Derek Brown. He's the player that's going to run you into Nick Scorton, that's going to run you into Princely Umamiellan. What do I mean by this? He's a complete defensive disruptor. And the reason that I'm so excited, y'all, I'm still hearing people saying that it's an overpay. But I just want to mention this to y'all. It may have cost us $120 million a year with that contract, right? But you know what it didn't cost? Our ability to build our team in the draft. See, think about it. We didn't have to give up any draft capital for a premium pass rusher in Jaelan Phillips. That's significant, y'all. When we think about the Trey Hendricksons, the Max Crosbys, and I know that whole wonky situation with Max Crosby, but even like last year, the Micah Parsons, right? We talking about players that typically you got to give up 1, 2, sometimes 3 first-round draft picks to get because it's a premium position. And we didn't have to give up any draft picks. Man, this the Hope Dealer. Yeah, I got a second call.
All right, let's go ahead and just get to that second call.
Hope Dealer second call real quick. But y'all, we got to wrap our heads around that. It did not cost any draft capital to get a premium pass rusher that's only 26 years old, coming from Vic Fangio's system, and he's already proven, when healthy, to be a disruptor. Dan Morgan is the man. I'm here to tell you. But hey, I do got a question for you guys, though. I was thinking, so far in free agency, I really like what we've done so far. But my question for y'all is this. Do y'all think that we've upgraded the floor of our team? Or do you think we've upgraded the ceiling, or both?
Oh, that's interesting.
Based on the moves that we've made so far. Have we raised the floor, but not the ceiling? Have we raised the ceiling, but not the floor? Or do y'all feel like with the moves that we've made so far, we've upgraded the ceiling and the floor? I'm really curious to know y'all thoughts on that. But anyway, y'all, this the Hope Dealer. Hey, it's Tuesday. The weather's beautiful. The rain is gone. The tempest, the hurricanes, all that, they out of here. Hey, everybody out there, keep pounding. Later.
Thank you for that call. The Hope Dealer bringing hope to us. Is the floor raised and the ceiling stayed the same, or is the floor raised and the ceiling higher? I got to think this is that the floor has to be raised, right? This was not a stand pat off season, right? And a stand pat off season with that kind of historic Panther, bring in some kind of semi moves, This is, I think the Panthers really up their game. And I think if the floor isn't raised, then that would be insane, right? Is that the Carolina Panthers address so many important needs on defense that, now if it works or not on paper, but I think the ceiling is really, I think this is, you got two key pieces and that I feel like we're holding us back last year, CK.
No, I think the floor there's, so the biggest signing of the offseason was the Jaelan Phillips, right? That kept the floor where it was, because that's a high risk signing. What I mean is he's got the injuries that have plagued his young career, but when he's been healthy, he's been one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Now, why that's valuable to us, and we're talking about pressures, we're not talking about sacks, because that's largely, we're back at the king of almost when we talk about things like with Brian Burns. Right, Brian Burns had a similar thing, but he was able to actually get an over 10 sacks in a season one time, with us at least. But what this is going to do with this scheme that Evero plays, and this is where Evero is going to possibly have a great defense next year, is when you put pressure on the quarterback, you have two things that you're requiring them to do: to either escape the pocket or to throw the ball sooner than they wanted to. And that's going to benefit you when you have ball hawk cornerbacks like we do in Mike Jackson and J.C. Horn. So I think the turnovers could be a big part about why they brought Jaelan Phillips in. It may not necessarily be about getting the sacks and the sack fumbles that Sea-Dog is looking for when it comes to a big contract like this. It may very well be about, getting short fields for our offense, things like that. But the ceiling, now here's the other part: the Devin Lloyd signing, the Walker signing, these raised the floor pretty significantly, right? Those bring the floor up. The ceiling maybe doesn't jump through the roof with those guys, but it does the ceiling. So right now I think it's equally raised the ceiling and it's equally raised the floor, because you've got a couple of those guys who I think are going to be solid starters for us, and keep our floor a little bit higher. So that's my answer to the question. I'll just leave it at that.
DK.
I agree to a certain extent. I think, honestly, if you look at what we did last year, we had some glaring holes. There were some glaring holes, and I think we worked to address them. But if you think about it, I think if you look at just our pass protection, right, from last year to the year before, 2 years ago, we allowed 60-some sacks. Last year, we allowed, I think, 35? So we already were moving up. Now, the reason I'm pointing that out, we've made some signings that I think could make that even better. I think that's going to raise our floor. I think, the whole thing with Icky, that's still to be seen. But I think we've worked to at least stay put what we had accomplished last year. And then we get people like Jaelan Phillips and some of these other guys. I think that raises our ceiling. So I'm going to say I think our floor may be right where it was. I think we kept that about the same, but I think the ceiling is going to be exponentially higher with some of these guys we've brought in, some of these moves we made. I mean, again, you sign a guy to a four-year contract like we did Phillips. I mean, we expect him to produce, and I think that right there is the ceiling going up.
I think that's a fair take, is that the floor kind of is where it's at. I mean, is that natural trajectory. You want to see natural growth, right? So you want to see, incremental growth, like the Panthers, just 2 games better, 1 game better. But, if we go back to how that shook out last year, is that we're 8-9. There's plays and there's issues that plagued this team in a sense that could have flipped it to a 9-8, a 10-7 type season. And CK was all over it all season about the pass rush. And then if you look at some of those games, if you look at, so many people talk about the prevent defense, and they talk about like how mad they get about, especially in that Rams game, like how you just let them, how they can just,
walk down the
middle of the
2
field.
minutes. No effort whatsoever. Like they literally, all they had to do was just run a 10-yard route, and it turned into a 25-yard gain.
Yeah, and weaknesses there is coverage in the linebacker and the lack of pass rush. So on paper, these, I think, like you said, is like, I mean, they have to work, right, for it to, like, I mean, you can't forecast injuries, you can't, but I mean, the team got better on paper. I think though, where the ceiling can go, and this is what we'll talk about, this Jaelan Phillips, which is kind of the controversial signing in a sense, is that some people see as an overpay, or is it a bold move? And this kind of is very adjacent to the conversation we were just having. Is this a win now or build right? Is that if you would have traded for Max Crosby, you're paying for the name, the now, and you're putting so much into it. If you would have paid the money like you're paying Jaelan Phillips for Trey Hendrickson, which you could have gotten cheaper, right? You're paying for the player now, and this very short window. The risk with Jaelan Phillips is that he's had injury problems throughout his college and professional career. Some of these injuries are kind of like those complementary injuries, is that you have an ACL injury and that you're probably trying to come back so quick that it stresses other parts of your body that then led to an ACL injury, right?
Achilles.
Was it ACL then Achilles, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Is that, but those kind of like, how do you compensate because of one injury, your body, like trying, he did play a full 17 game season last year, right? With 2 teams. Yeah. What I like is, and look, I'm just rooting for these moves, right? Like, I don't know if they're going to work, but to be honest, I like Jaelan Phillips as a signing better than I like trading for Max Crosby. I like the Jaelan Phillips signing better than I like paying Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson's kind of a one-trick pony. He's more of a pass rusher. He's not so much built for the run stop, right? Is that Phillips is truly an overall player when he's out there. But here's the thing that teams, and we go back to that win now or build right. Are you paying for the player that was, or are you paying for what you think they're going to be? And so, yes, there is a risk and a gamble here, but I think that Dan Morgan is paying Jaelan Phillips not for the player he has been, but the player he believes he can and will be. So I think that is, I really do think that this is, I mean, it looks big. And let's actually we'll just bust through this real quick, and we'll take back to the calls right away. But like, while we're talking about Jaelan Phillips, the question is a lot of people, the reaction has been, is like, how the heck did you pay this guy this amount of money where he's getting paid like this? Is in the previous slide right here is, I mean, we're talking Jaelan Phillips is ahead of Danielle Hunter, who was, I think, like one of the sack leaders last year, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, right? Again, are you paying for the player that was or what they will be? And a lot of people have reacted to this on the internet. Hold on, let me take these comments down. How do I do that? Here we go. Just so we can see this. But the question is this the right bold move or is this an overpay? This is at him. What's this? Him bid Stan? Him bid Stan here. I think this is a Panthers fan. Jaelan Phillips to the Carolina Panthers. This move, he writes this. This move was one that had NFL fans feeling all sorts of ways. Some people believe this was a great signing, while others believe Phillips is overrated and the Panthers overpaid. I'm personally someone who loves this signing. The Panthers defense has the right pieces with Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson, things that CK meant or suggested there, but desperately needed help on the edge. Phillips is coming off a season where he generated pressure on 18.8% of his pass rush snaps, fourth in the league with 250 plus more snaps. So he played a whole season. The Panthers are coming off a season where they had 82 hurries as a unit. Think about that. And Phillips is coming off a season where he had 60 by himself, right? So if you just add that to the equation, we're raising the floor there if it works out. 30 million is a lot, I agree. But I believe the money is well spent. The Panthers defense changes overnight with Lloyd and Phillips. Other people I found on Twitter talking about this, these were not paid. I looked at their profiles just to see. I mean, in this fight, just looking around at an outside look, Matt Mosley said, I like Phillips as this is, I didn't get his full tag. I like Phillips as a player, but not only does the overall cost of this deal seem like to be an overpay, the $80 million guaranteed money within the first year is ridiculous. Lesser clubs always do this as a way to attract. Panthers are taking a risk here. I mean, look, you can't argue there. There is a risk to it. Hugh Jupside says 28.5 sacks in 5 years. This is an insane overpay. Now, if we look at the contract details, guys, Jaelan Phillips signed a 4-year, $120 million contract with the Panthers, including $35 million sign-in bonus, $80 million guaranteed, average salary of $30 million. In 2026, he will get a base salary of $1.25 million, but a signing bonus of $35 million, a workout bonus of $25 million, carrying a cap hit of only $9 million. I don't know how they do this, but somehow, I do a little bit, but only counting $10 million against the cap. And if we just look at it real quick, this is what it looks like after year one. Cap hit in 2027 is $32.5 million. Big cap hit right there. It's like that's when he's getting that 30 million number, and the Panthers are feeling as a club. Panthers got him next year regardless of that because there's $50 million in dead cap. So they're spreading out that 60 million over this 4 years. And year 3, cap hit goes up $5 more million, 38, 17.5 in dead money. In year 4, $38 million cap still sitting there the same, but this is when the Panthers can get out of this deal if they want to, right, CK?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when you look at the final that final year, that's the one that's going to be. We could see us, we could get out of that and save $30 million to the cap if we needed to. But that also is the year where we would open up for an additional negotiation, to maybe spread that $38 million cap hit over another 5-year, contract or a 4-year or 3-year contract. So that usually those contracts are built in with the final year being kind of an opt-out option. And that's sort of what you see there with that structure with this contract.
DK, when I look at these numbers, I just try to remind myself what I was saying is we're paying for what he will be, not what he is. Is you're not imagine signing a deal like this to a guy who's 30.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it. It wouldn't happen. But again, this was a need that we needed. I mean, like I said before, we got 2 years ago, I would have said the need was offensive line, right? Last year, again, we allowed half the sacks we did the year before. However, we were 30th in the league in sacks last year. That's where we have a glaring hole. So you pay somebody like this, you structure something like this to where the guy's going to come in, and I think it's an instant shot of adrenaline that to our line, and now it's going to be. I think this is worth it, man. I mean, look, I say again, the cap hit next year, it's not awful. It's not. Especially for,
it's a top tier player, right? Yeah. It's what you pay for, if he goes out there and look, I mean, if he has 10 sacks and has a pressure rate that we're talking about, like we're sitting here going, that's money well spent.
Yeah.
If he has a high pressure rate with not as many sacks, you're probably still saying, look, he can get better. The only thing that is the risk is that if any single player gets hurt.
Mm-hmm. But that's with anybody. It doesn't matter who they are, what you're paying them.
True.
I mean, you're playing the NFL. I mean, it's going to happen. You can't predict it. You got to pay the guy for what you need and what you think he's going to be.
And we're not playing scared money, right? Yep. And so that's what we've done. We've signed a Bruce Irvin in the twilight of his career in 2019 for nothing. We've gotten a Justin Houston who's just, even my favorite player of all time, Julius Peppers, is like the sunset of their career. Is that if you are going to, the Panthers have not historically put out money, there is a risk, but I would rather spend the money with the opportunity than to, get in the batter's box and take a swing, man.
Yep. Shoot, if we get to the top half of the league in sacks this year, going from 30 to the top half, I'm stoked.
Yeah, because our defense jumped from the historically worst CK 2 years ago to ultimately close to the top 20, around. We jumped about 10 spots. Defense played well.
Made some moves.
They made some things, and we'll talk about this next week. We'll do the blueprint, right?
The blueprint, yep.
Yeah, so we'll come back and talk about that next week and some of the things they're thinking about on defense. So yes, there is risk with this. And as Jonathan Collins, thank you for the C3 Super Chat, $1.99. Appreciate it, man. Helping to keep the StreamYard paid right there. Could be an overpay, but this is something you have to do to attract free agents.
Exactly.
And I just like the young. I'd rather take the gamble on a young player. I was not just to if Cody was here, I was like Trey Hendrickson. That was his dude. I just think that's kind of name and sack number and not paying what they were. So let's go back to the calls. The number's 252-228-5098. We got Kev in the hole.
Yo, with my chocolate espresso. Yo, Dan killed it. Yo, after we got Devin, the linebacker, I was like, yo, is there any money left for Walker? Just joking around on X, and the very next day we got him. I was like, oh shit. Fucking crazy, man. But there's still a lot of good free agents out there. Debo Samuel out there. We need another receiver, good enough tight ends, some defensive tackles, some corners. Rasul Douglas, can be our third corner. Kind of fill in a lot of it because we still have a lot of money left. That's the craziest thing. We're middle still, the pack. As far as the draft goes, BPA first round, and I think the BPA is going to be the tight end out of Oregon. Honestly. Just think. Also, I think we're going to have to draft a couple offensive linemen as backups and future starters. Because, I think Moulton might be gone, and probably one of our two guards are going to be gone. If they draft a defensive tackle too. But I think pick 19 is either, DPA or trade back, and this is the perfect opportunity to trade back. I'm always about trading back. I say it every year. But this time, 19th perfect spot because, the talent pool from 19 to 32 is kind of the same, much closer than number 1 overall to 19. Let's get an extra second round pick or something, or get it next year first. That's what it seems like the teams are doing nowadays. Constantly getting extra picks next year, extra first, But those are my thoughts. Peace.
Thanks, Kev, man. We'll talk about that tight end. We'll take one more call and come back to that tight end discussion, some of the mock drafts going forward.
Hey guys, John B. Jenkins here. I wanted to call in and talk about the free agents we've got and also give you an update on some alternative football. But as far as the free agents that we're bringing in, I was really excited with what we brought in last year on defense, and I feel like I'm even more excited now, especially after watching a lot of those videos that the Panthers have been putting out. And I was thinking of something kind of funny, but I mean, I really think that we're covering a lot of needs, and yeah, I mean, there are still some glaring holes, but I mean, like on the offensive line, I would think, but other than that, we can pretty much just sit around the tree on draft day, Christmas, and see what Santa Claus will be bringing us. But anyway, as far as the alternative football league updates for you, I got to see Paxton Lynch play quarterback in the NAL, the National Arena League, and that's very much, again, one of the more semi-pro-ish leagues. And so to see a giant NFL caliber, wasn't he a first-round pick of the Broncos, maybe second round? I don't know.
Yeah, wasn't first.
An NFL-sized quarterback playing amongst those guys. Let's just say the Colorado Spartans dominated the Dallas Bulls, who they themselves had just beat Team Mexico 101-0 the week before. And that's in the NAL. In the IFL, my favorite team, the Fisher's Freight, won with my guy Felix Harper. I met this guy a long time ago in Jacksonville when he was getting ready to go play the Jacksonville Sharks, and that's how I came to know of the IFL. So, rooting for my guy Felix and the Freight, featuring Dixie Wooten, their coach. I think that's got a ring to it. And then, of course, the UFL will be starting up next weekend. And, again, they're going to have a 4-point field goal. So any kick after 60 yards will be 4 points. And I was listening to Rick Neuheisel, who's the coach of the Dallas team. I think he was on Rick Eisen or whatever the hell that guy's name is. But he was saying that what would the strategy be if you're on, like, third down and you tell your quarterback, drop back and take a sack so that we could potentially kick a 60-yard field goal? Because all these kickers in the NFL that are setting all these records, pretty much every single one of them came from the UFL or the USFL, but from these spring leagues. So they're capitalizing on that, and they will have a 4-point field goal this year. So anyway, that's your alternative football league update. As always, this has been John B. Jenkins. Keep pounding Carolina Panthers. Keep pounding Panthers Vroslaw.
Thanks, John B, with the alternative football update. And what we learned from John B, he is just our window into the wild world of football that we don't know about. But I got excited about when the AFL came out. Like we were like looking for something for this break and this and that, and then none of them ever work. But wow, what we've learned from John B. Jenkins is that they are really pushing the limits of what you can do with the rules of football for a 4-point field goal to different rules in the fourth quarter. It's insane out there. Thank you, John B. Jenkins, who likes the NFL free agency. Let's go back quickly to, we got 2 more calls in the, 3 more. We'll take 1 more quick call and then we'll go back to Kev's comment about the tight ends in the draft.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that Jaelan Phillips. I think it's a huge move, kind of like a poker face showing where the Panther organization is now and how they're feeling about
don't disagree
moving forward and being contenders in this league. If that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Actually, that's a good segue to this. Is we'll come back. Kev, don't forget. We won't forget. We're coming back to tight end needs and the mock drafts that are out there and who's out there. But guys, the NFC South has historically been a very tight division, right? Is people call it the worst division. We get offended by that. Is that we're very competitive. This is wild right now. Is if you, as of today, the NFC South is being described as the most wide open and high stakes division in the NFL. In some ways, because of this, I mean, I guess every division is doing an arms race to a deal. But when I tell you the odds of the division winners, I think you're going to be mad as a Panthers fan. Carolina Panthers won the division, correct?
Yeah. Don't they have the worst odds to win it again?
They do. is that Tampa Bay right now has the odds to win are in the range, if you look across the betting sites, plus 125 to plus 160.
Wild, by the way.
I know. 43 to 46% probability is implied right there. New Orleans at number 2, plus 320 to 360. It actually gets really tight for New Orleans and the Falcons. As people like New Orleans and the Falcons going into this season, 20% to 29% is their implied probability. The Falcons plus 185 to a range of all the way to plus 400, but the implied probability is 23 to 26%. The Carolina Panthers are plus 375 is the lowest number, and plus 550 is the highest number. They're the odds-on favorite to not win the division, and I know I have Panther goggles on. I understand that I root for my teams. I hate the Falcons more than anybody, I think. But when I look around, and we'll quickly look around this free agency, I don't see, and then coming back to the Hope Dealer's comment, is the floor. I see the floor going up and the ceiling going up for Carolina at a rate that is different for these other teams. Where is this disrespect coming from, DK? Why are the Carolina Panthers? Is this just the way it is?
I mean, historically, look at it. And I hate saying it, but I mean, that's what we've been. And it's been because of, let's be honest, we've had some GMs, managers. We've had some people that didn't do that well of a job that kind of put us back for a little bit. I mean, let's look at some of the trades that have put us back for years when it comes to, CMC, some of these other ones that I we all may not agree with, we may agree with, but I think that's kind of the stigma we're dealing with. I mean, people look at us and, oh, look, these guys are trading away the bank. I mean, then Bryce, too short, can't play, can't see over the line. There's a lot of these, I guess, stereotypes that people throw out there for who the Panthers are, what they do. And I mean, to me, I don't make a lot of sense. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should not be the top.
Right.
In any way, shape, or form.
They look like the worst team in the South for the back half of the year. It was, they lost 7 of the last 9 games that they played. And the only reason they won one of those 2 was because the coaches basically handed them the game against Panthers.
But I think they're at the top the same reason we're at the bottom. That's just what people, I mean,
it's the Bucs have been at the top of the division for, the past 5-6 years, admittedly. And we've been at the bottom. You're right. It's hard to trust the Panthers right now because you don't know who they are. I mean, again, we after we had that 3-game win streak, we were win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, 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 loss. You know what I mean? It was like it was just a comedy when it comes to the Panthers. Like, we would win the games we shouldn't win, but we would lose the games we should in the entire year. So I get why the disrespect is there, but when you and I know these are odds. These are where people are putting their money, so it's hard to put the money on the Panthers. I am fully aware of that
too.
But when you look at what the Panthers have done versus what the rest of the NFC South has done in the free agency, nobody really measures up to the Panthers' free agency. The Bucs, they lost more than they were able to replace. The Ashawn Robinson signing, I think that was a decent signing for them. I'm not going to knock it. I think he's a good player, but let's not get it twisted. Losing, that's not replacing what Mike Evans brought. That's not replacing a Jamel Dean, right? That's not, they haven't done that. And we'll see that. Now the Falcons, the other part of this is they have a new head coach. They don't know where Penix is at. They're replacing right now. They've got Tua in there. So we don't even know who's going to be their starting quarterback at the beginning of the year this year. There's uncertainty there. You don't know what's happening with James Pierce Jr. They don't have their first round draft pick this year, right? So it's not like they're going to be able to build in the draft in a significant way based on just that alone. To have them even ahead of us is, just doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense. The offensive, the Atlanta Falcons looked fantastic last year towards the end of it with Kirk Cousins. You know what I mean? So and he's not there anymore. So I don't know. Now the Saints are the only ones that I would say, I would be a little bit cautious about. They brought in Caden Ellis from the Falcons back to the Saints. I think he was a great linebacker for the Falcons. They brought in who else? They brought in this who was it that they got to? It was a good signing. I can't remember who it was, but they brought in some people that but they're still dealing with a cap issue over there at the Saints as well. So we'll see if Shug has a rookie, a sophomore slump. I am certainly concerned that he's going to continue on his upward trajectory that does where he eats in.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean,
two good comments in the chat about where these odds are, and they referenced that the Panthers have the toughest schedule next year. Now, you guys are there's right. I'm sure that that's the way they do it based on division winners, but at the same time, these division opponents have to play the same out of division opponents that the Carolina Panthers do, except for a couple, maybe 2 or 3 games that are outside of that cycle, right? They cycle the AFC or whatever it is, right? So I think one of the things when I look at these odds, guys, is I think about fantasy football, and fantasy football projection lists are just so last year based. It's like, it's just what they did last year. Let's just project it into this year. So one of the fantasy football problems that happens there is that it doesn't take into account players that have injured or new players and stuff and it doesn't cycle some of the nuance to it. And I think that this is what we're talking about. The nuance here is that it feels like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is that while they've been the leader for a while, it feels like is that it's been close and they seem like they are sliding or not making improvements. And if you look at this, is they lose Mike Evans, but here are their free agent signings: Jake Browning, Kenneth Gainwell. Now, Kenneth Gainwell they lose Rashad White to the Commanders at running back. Kenneth Gainwell, though, was named team MVP for the Steelers. He's a dual threat, 1,000 yards from scrimmage, but he had 537 rushing yards, 486 receiving. This is their biggest sign, really. And it's just with and Bucky Irvin's their dude. Look, Cade Ottman's a guy that was already on their team. Dan Freeney, offensive line, Al Quadan Muhammad, a 1-year, $6 million deal. Ashawn. It's Ashawn and Kenneth Gainwell is it. It's the same team minus Mike Evans with those guys. Now, if you look to, let's do this. New Orleans, right? Is New Orleans now? I feel like New Orleans said, we've got a second-year quarterback this guy's a little bit better than we anticipated. So let's do some things on offense. They go and get Travis Etienne, Noah Fant, but they lost some players. Let me see who did.
Demario Davis went up to the Jets.
Saints lose.
Demario Davis, Cam Jordan is still not back.
Well, yeah, okay. So I think they think he's going to come back, but how much did that team change with the addition? So they lose. Oh, here they lost to Demario Davis, key linebacker, maybe an aging player, right? You're not crying hysterically about it, but that New Orleans defense was better than we thought after the New Orleans offense got better throughout the season. But they lost Alontae Taylor. Cam Jordan still up in the air. Really is this. Here are the names: Ty Chandler, Travis Etienne, Noah Fant, David Edwards, who is signed a deal that would pay him upwards. He's off a guard. Dylan Rod. I don't know any of these players. And maybe Julian Blackman, nothing right there. And then you look to Atlanta. Now Atlanta, things get kind of wonky here. Kirk Cousins gone, right? Kirk Cousins, I tell you this is like my hero. He really is my hero, man. This dude makes more money than anybody.
Yep.
Remember, he broke records when he went to Minnesota. He got franchised 3 times with the Commanders, or they were the Redskins to the football team to the Commanders. But he then got an $80 million fully guaranteed in 2 years in Minnesota. He then got a $160 million deal with Atlanta, and it was a backup. But now they've signed Tua Tagovailoa to a 1-year deal, vet minimum. Jahan Dotson, who was a former Commander. Austin Hooper, right? I think that's is that a bring back? Kyle Pitt,
yeah, he was there, but it was he was there before.
They sunk their money into Kyle Pitts. They brought with the franchise tag. None of these others are like, so what I'm asking, or what I think we go back to the Hope Dealers call is that when we look at this, is that the Panthers seem to be stepping forward while these other teams either are maintaining. It really feels like we'll have to get up with them and feel like with some of their analysts. Let's take another call. We've got two more calls, and we'll come back to we're rounding out the show. We're going as fast as we can. We still got to talk about that mock draft, where the Panthers are getting set up here, that tight end situation, and is this historically the best free agency ever? Let's go back to the calls.
Hey, how you guys doing? My name is Sampachi. I've been commenting on your pod today, but my things about Jaelan Phillips' contract is that if you guys go and look it up, we're only on the books for, or the cap hit is only about $10 million. So it's a year one, very contract friendly or cap friendly deal. The same thing with Devin Lloyd. The first year, very contract friendly. And I think after the next year, or above with Devin Lloyd, we're only on the hook for about $9 million or so. And I think with Jaelan Phillips, when he gets to 30 or the year before his last year, we have an out there too. So Brent Tillis and Dan Morgan really cooked on these contracts. Yes, they got this guarantee money, but they already got that up front. And then now this first year is very, very, very cap friendly. And to me, that's great because our cap is looking to be about $58 million next year. And then the year after that, about 78, I want to say, because I was looking at it the other day. So we're looking great. They're doing a great job. And like that guy said, we got a person at a premium position and had to gave up no draft capital. I think they were cooking on both of those contracts, and kudos to Tillis and Dan Morgan on that. I think we're in win mode now. So go draft Bryce some more weapons. Go get people out there who can make a difference. And let's get to the Super Bowl now rather than later. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm out.
Great call. Great comments in the chat. Thank you I think that's a first-time caller, man. And welcome to the C3 Panthers podcast. And we're here every Tuesday night live at 9 p.m. Longest run in 14 years, nonstop doing this podcast. Expert football fans, not football experts, but just like you guys, working through the news and notes every week. Actually, that's a good time. He said this. He said, let's talk about getting Bryce Young some weapons. If we talk about, is how we're positioned. Is Jatavius Sanders maybe third-round pick, I think, guys, a couple of years ago. Showed some promise, got that neck injury, kind of disappeared, had a big drop early in the season. Kind of reasserted himself and was playing, but look, it's Tommy Tremble, Jatavius Sanders, and Mitchell, who played a great rookie season with the Carolina Panthers. Is this the place now? If you look at, and I want to give credit where credit's due, is check out at @JustinM_NFL. He writes for SI.com. He sent me his mock draft, and he has the Carolina Panthers taking Kenyon Sadiq. Now, Kenyon Sadiq is like one of these. Let me see, what was his combine numbers? They were kind of like these sick Kenyon Sadiq.
He had a 4.39 40.
Yeah, right. And then I think there was kind of like, it was like him, Master Clay, like is the kind of Kyle Pitts allure, of that speed.
Athletic
and
freak.
Then there is like, and then there's kind of like all these other tight ends in that draft in this class are still like tight end athletic worthy, but that number, that 4.39 40-yard dash, a 43.5-inch vertical. This guy right here is the toast of the town in a sense, or at least. So I think that you're looking about adding offensive weapons. Jatavius Sanders coming off the injury. I have historically been against drafting tight ends in the first round. I think though that I've tried to adjust. I just say not in the top 15.
I can see that.
But I will give you this is right now there are is like, what do the Panthers want to do? They open things up. This free agency positioned them to do whatever the hell they want. It feels like, right? Is they're not forced into anything. But another name, this is fun, is in this same mock draft, the pick before number 18 to the Minnesota Vikings, it was Dylan Thyman, also Oregon player, safety, who this safety ran a 4.35 and had a 41-inch vertical. Now, these are two names that I've heard people like, oh, this would be great. Let's add him. We're early on. Who knows what's going to happen in the draft? What I do like about this is these numbers, these combine freak athletes are kind of being projected in the Panthers range right here. This rangy, we haven't had a rangy safety. Is Dylan Thyman the guy that could be? Will they be around? Is Kenyon Sadiq? Could he be there? You guys, very quickly, your thoughts on the tight end room and what is this something that the Panthers need to do to bolster that offense?
I'm going to say I think 100%. I mean, if you think about it, the Panthers have basically ranked in the bottom of the league for tight end usage since Greg Olsen. Like the bottom.
Yeah.
Since Greg Olsen. So, I mean, we haven't had anybody that could do that. Like, it's just not a thing. And I think, again, imagine having an athletic tight end like this to take attention off Tetaroa, or to even give Bryce a quick dump off to somebody who got 10-inch hands. The dude's got 10-inch hands. He's going to catch the ball. He's not going to drop it. He's going to catch it. I think that's a safety blanket for Bryce that he's not had since he's been with us.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. I don't know where we're going at the drafts, CK. I hate the draft. I hate all the speculation because 99% of it is wrong. 5% turns out to be right. But it is nice to see some of these players that have that freak athleticism, or that like we're not talking about players adding to the team and they're really like a 11th pick, a 9th pick, is maybe. We'll see what this draft is. CK, you ready to take the next call?
Let's do it, man.
All right, let's go.
How you guys doing? Again, this is Apache. This is the second part about draft picks. I like Kenyon Sadiq a lot. I don't think he's going to make it to us, and maybe he won't. I like Dylan Thyman as well, another Oregon guy, but he may not get to us as well. So at number 19, I'm okay with whatever Dan and them decides to do. I mean, it all depends on who's there. Maybe we trade back. I don't really know. But we do need a safety. I really don't want to start the season with Nick Scott. I really don't. I think he's subjected to one side of the field, and that's it. But I would like to, if we don't get Thieneman, I would love A.J. Halsey. I love him as a player. I also like Bud Clark, too, in the later rounds as well.
Oh, I like that name, too.
Halsey or Clark, I would absolutely love. I love Jacob Rodriguez as well. If we can get him, okay, great. But I also like Jeremiah Trotter as well as another linebacker, because I don't believe in Trevin Wallace. I don't. Some people do, but I don't. I like Stowers as well as a tight end if we don't get Sadiq. And there's a host of other ones. Cornerback wise, I know that like we need a like nickel, but hey, just another cornerback period I would take. I like Devin Marshall from North Carolina State in the later rounds. I mean, that kid can play, and I think he can play outside and inside. So I love him as that. And running back wise, I like Desmond Claiborne from Wake Forest as that guy who is in that kind of A-Chan role. He's fast like A-Chan. I think he's faster than he is. And he can catch, and, you know, he's like a human joystick and all that, too. So that's just my take on some of the people who we can draft. There's so many other people who I love in the draft and stuff. But whatever Dan wants to do at like 19, if one of them wide receivers there, I say give Bryce another weapon because I really think that he needs it and he can use it because he started out slow every season. Every season. And we need him to start quick, and we need people who can separate quick and get open so Bryce can get that ball out. And hopefully now they'll use their tight ends more. But if not, then it's going to lessen our offense, just like it has in the past, because we just don't get a lot of production out of these guys. And like, we need to start getting more production out of our tight end position. I really, really, truly believe that.
All right. Thank you for the call. You know, like I will try to navigate you through for the draft as best as possible as someone. I'm going to ask the listeners and the callers to convince me to care about the NFL draft. And what I mean by that is I like to wait until they're drafted. When I first started the website, the podcast, we were like, oh, we got to learn everything. And I was like, man, we spent a bazillion hours draft 2.2.7.2 this, that. Come on, man. Y'all just bored. But right now I do want to final segment, or not final segment. We've got the ISUB segment that we close out with, but the last part of the show, I want to think about free agency in the historical context. And how this free agency potentially stacks up. And maybe it's going to be difficult to probably answer that question until it pans out. But we got to think of this, is that if you want to think about great years for the Carolina Panthers, you got to think about the years that they've made the playoffs, right? You mentioned, DK, that you became a Panther fan in that inaugural season. That second year, they were able to reach the NFC Championship. They basically were a free agent squad in '95, right?
Thing. Yeah, I mean, that everybody pretty much. I mean, that's just how it went. I mean, that was their inaugural season. I think
they get that crazy draft where they get to pick 2 or 3 players from each team. That's actually kind of cool. We need an extra team in the NFL to see.
Hey, they've talked about it. But I mean, I think at that point it was what, Sam Mills, John Casey,
right? Yeah,
like
Frank Wright.
Yeah. So we're going to take that first 2 years off the table. And if you think about this, is that look, the Panthers made the Super Bowl in that, is it the 2000, hold on, I always get the numbers confused. It's the 03-04 season, right? The Super Bowl was in 04 technically.
Yes. Yeah, it was the 2003 free agency where they signed Delhomme.
Okay. So we got to say this, is that if we're going to look at like difference makers, we think 2003, we think of 2005, right? Because they get the NFC Championship as a wild card team. 08, they lost in the divisional round. We want to think, I mean, obviously 2015, right? So if we think about those years, let me see who we got here is in 2003, right? Is you have two very important signings. They don't seem like it at the moment, right? Is Jake Delhomme and Stephen Davis. So now let me tell the listeners what we got up here on the screen, and that as we'll talk about these couple of years and then just try to place what this year could be. But I've looked at I went back and I just tried to think. I actually made this today. It took way more time than you would think to build this stupid little graphic of just finding JPEGs of each player and this and that. But like, who are major hits that made a big difference, right? Like, not just like, then there are kind of strong hits in free agency. We did these categories: elite hit, strong hit, solid value, kind of met the idea of what you wanted them to be, mixed, and miss. So we'll kind of just highlight those couple of years. I'll quickly highlight those years, and then we'll talk. I want you guys to tell me if we want to move up and down in those rankings. But 2003, you get a Super Bowl team in the making, right? Nobody knows Jake Delhomme. He's coming from the Saints. I almost said Patrick Pinky. He's a former ECU quarterback. Rodney Peete supposed to start. Jake Delhomme comes in out of nowhere. He's been in NFL Europe. They did get a big free agent in Steven Davis, running back, who had a great year. I think 1,400 yards rushing. These guys, that has to be a great free agency too. You made the effing Super Bowl, right? You fast forward to that kind of 05, 07 range. You had Ken Lucas, which I think I have, if I'm going to move somebody up and down in this, it's Ken Lucas on my list right here. Ken Lucas being the second in the strong hit category. Strong hit being Steve Smith punched him in the face. So you had that 2005, 08. Let me see. I'm trying to think of, but like 2015 is like arguably, to me, is the biggest one. In 2015, Peanut Tillman, you got Kurt Coleman, you got Roman Harper.
But he was on the team the year before, wasn't he?
Who?
He was
Roman Harper.
Oh, did he come in 2014? Roman Harper?
2015.
Was it 2015? You might be right. I felt like he was
he was an added player in 2015 signed. So
interesting.
Yeah.
We got Jericho Cotchery, Roman Harper, Peanut Tillman, Kurt Coleman. Those are all. I think Ted Ginn came back that year.
I think so. I know
Remember he was on the 2013. Then he went and played for the Saints or the No, he went to the Cardinals. 2015 has to be one of the most epic free agencies. Now, I don't know how we rank this free agency because it hasn't panned out, right? Like, I mean, you have to think about this. I remember the regrade of the Panthers draft after 2015, and you had I think it was Trey Boston. You had Ben Wickery. Like, I mean, all these players, they were like, oh, they should have taken them in the first round. And then half these players didn't pan out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is going to be. I think if the Panthers go and do something, we are going to be putting this on the list of historically. So let's just work through this, though. Who do you guys want to move on this list? And I'll just help you guys out because I know the people are small. So, all right. All right. So the top category is Jake Delhomme and Steven Davis. That's a Super Bowl year. Mike Wall was on that Super Bowl team. He's the first in the second category. Then you got Ken Lucas, Ted Ginn Jr., Peanut Tillman, and Mike Mitchell. I put Mike Mitchell up here. Mike Mitchell was big on that 2013 defense. Then there's Adam Thielen, Julius Peppers. Now, Julius Peppers, my favorite player. I hate putting him anywhere but the top, but he came back in 2019 or 2017 maybe. Roman Harper, Dontari Poe. 82. Mike Mitchell, 80. Who was this? Oh, I think this is Cotchery right here. This is Jericho Cotchery. Rodney, who's this? This is Chosen. Robbie Anderson. I put, help me out with this guy's name again. CK, I always forget it, from Tampa.
Gerald McCoy.
And then my most hated person in the world, Matt Khalil. Maybe not most, but he's that guy got paid to pick up trash in the parking lot. I got Miles Sanders and Teddy Bridgewater. Who do you want to move up or down in this list, guys? Am I too hard on Teddy Bridgewater? Am I too hard on Robbie Anderson because he was 1,000-yard receiver?
I think Teddy Bridgewater. The only reason I think miss is not the bad spot for him on that is because it's a miss with the amount of money we ended up paying him after he left in dead money. Like, we let him go after 1 year and just continued to pay him for 2 more years after that. And so we
gave up on him prematurely. Actually,
yeah. Now, I mean, we all felt like he was not what we needed for the team to get over the top. But I think that realizing what type of a hell we were in after we let him walk made it a little bit more. I think that makes that a little bit. I would put him. I feel like I would be more comfortable with him in the mix.
I do the same thing. Look, I think he came in after the whole Cam Newton saga and was basically expected to be. I think the expectations were set too high for Teddy Bridgewater. He didn't. I don't think it's a miss. I think, again, I'll agree with that. I mean, maybe he wasn't set up to succeed, and maybe we didn't need to pay him that much money. But I'll go with him. I'm not a chosen Anderson fan. I'm taking him down. Look, he had 1 good year, and it was okay. But what did he do for us, even during that time? I mean, he had. I think he was more of a cancer in the locker room too. A lot of issues with chosen. I'm moving him down, man.
I like first the comments. We got to get into the comments. The chat is always undefeated, right? So thank you guys. One is this: Ricky Prohl was a free agent acquisition in that Super Bowl run. Who was a big time contributor, and arguably got to put him up as an elite, maybe because it was a coaching addition too later on. Wesley Walls, right now we're going way back. Was he a free agent? I'm sure I know he was. We've had him on the show. He was playing in Green Bay, right? He played with Green Bay and he caught a touchdown from far, but that might have been after us. I think that was in the twilight of his career. All right, so here's some names here. Is that as they put them up there, I got nervous. I was like, did I leave these people off? They said, where is Greg Olsen? Greg Olsen was a trade. Jared Allen was a trade. Now, off-season additions, but I did not think of them as free agent additions. Mike Tolbert, some people want, and I like this one. Michael Orr.
Oh, yeah.
That was a giant one for that 2015 season. So right there, let's see if anybody else had. There we go. So look, I guess how do you classify a great free agency is what it produces the following year.
Yes, true.
Or maybe 2 years down the road, I guess you can make a deep argument. But if we look at these great additions, we're saying, oh, you made the playoffs, you did this. I would move Ken Lucas down. That's what I kind of like, is like Ken Lucas. I mean, he played like I would say Ken Lucas was the only time we've gotten a big name. Like, that was the one. He was coming out of Seattle. He was like, oh, this guy's supposed to, and then he got punched in the face by Steve Smith and was just ruined from the beginning. He was pretty good though, but he was never the best on the team. The team was okay. I like Don Terry Poe a lot. I think Joe McCoy was too busy. It was too twilight, but I thought it was a fun exercise, guys, to see. And what this shows you too is that the Panthers really have some like basic ass free agents in their past. Like, we're really reaching deep to go Stephen Davis. So
yeah,
right.
It's you're the free agency has been, again, historically, and the thing about every one of those free agents, none of them were in the prime of their career.
No, I think we got lucky.
Yeah,
a few times.
Right. Stephen Davis in twilight, kind of, but got one more season out of him. How about this? Let me ask you guys this. is there a bigger miss? Can you name a bigger free agent miss than Matt Khalil? 5 years, $55 million deal coming off an injury. I don't know. To me, it's like he is the. I hated this mug. I tell you, I thought I hated Byron Bell.
He got paid for no reason. That was the issue. Like, he only got paid because his brother was advocating for him. It felt like.
I mean, I'll throw one at you. Sean Gilbert.
Oh yeah. That's deep in the well. He was a big giant name and a big contract then.
Biggest miss.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they paid him like $50 million, something like that. 7 years, $47 million.
And that was like in the 90s.
Yeah, that was in 98. So that's a lot. That's a big swing and a miss.
Oh, somebody said Sean Gilbert was a trade.
I don't know. It says for 7 years.
Either way, right? I mean, we're going way deep in the well to try to find somebody that can be worse than Matt Khalil.
Yeah, I'm reaching here because that's
we are pushing Gemini to the limits here. All right, guys, thank you so much. The show's almost over. I won't say thank goodness. I've had a blast. You're listening to the longest running Panthers podcast. Been around, rocking and rolling since 2013. We're live every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Thanks for your time, your attention, your energy. Thank you for the people that donated their money. That's incredible. But I do appreciate your time and your conversation. It really means a lot. Smash the thumbs up button, subscribe. We're on Spotify and iTunes and all of that jazz. Do us a solid and just you see the comment, share it with somebody, man. It really helps. We are one of those podcasts that's grown organically, and one share, one commenter at a time really helps. Guys, we got one final segment to close out the show. It's our homage to Steve Smith. And let me see here. Cody, again, once again, I miss you. It's our homage to Steve Smith, where we tell someone to ice up, toughen up, to get it together. This is where we can step inside or outside the bounds of football and just tell someone to toughen up and get in line or celebrate something. You can do whatever you want. It's the ice up pick. CK, I hope you got something for me.
Do you have something that you wanted to throw out first?
No, I need to think. I mean, I had something, and then like as I'm trying to find the video of like the intro music and thinking about introing the segment, like my brain just went, "What am I going to do?"
I'll throw out something. I think that we all can see the world kind of where it's at right now. And I want to ice up the people who, and I don't know if I talked about this part, but I think that we talk about Trump derangement syndrome, but it's also Trump derangement syndrome with anybody who criticizes anything that the current administration does. Like, even if they are fans of the majority of what he has accomplished in office, one criticism is met with the most ridiculous response from people that have no ability to see outside of the bounds of their political ideologies. And so I say that because, when you see people, a lot of these conservative podcasters, they're like at each other's throats right now because somebody doesn't agree with us invading Iran or, attacking Iran or what have you. So I'm icing up people who have no ability to see past what one person on one side of the aisle that you want to follow is doing, and not being able to accept any level of criticism, and accepting that maybe there were better ways we could have handled specific things. A lot of the stuff I agree that's happened should have happened, and I'm happy with some of the stuff that's taken place. But I think that creating another war in the Middle East was certainly not something I had on my list of things I was hoping that we were going to be doing. So I'm icing up those people who can't see, reason when somebody who has been, who considers themselves maybe a little right of the line offers a little criticism to what's going on in the current environment.
There's so much irony in the fact that I teach history for a living, right, and higher education, and like I at one point in my life felt very political, and the irony of this is I started this podcast so I stopped arguing about politics with people, and I was just like, oh, I can say I hate you because you're a Saints fan, but I still like you as a person. I didn't have to unfriend you and all of this.
Yeah.
I have really removed myself from the news, but I listen to the news when I take a shower. I say, Alexa, play the news. Right. And I just that's the only time I engage with the news. And I did hear that like the counterterrorism guy was resigned. He was like, this is kind of just a bullshit or something like this.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's just wild that people such big geopolitical things are just decided by fucking morons. So my ice up pick actually goes to productivity.
Ooh,
I know this is bananas. I hate every time I'm super productive, which I try to be. Like I try to work hard, right? My job and my life and my family and everything. I'm busting ass. I feel like a lot, but when I bust ass, especially, right? And like I'm like, oh man, I was so productive. Then I kind of backtrack the next day, and I'm like, oh, it's like a counter swing of lack of productivity. And then I feel this immense guilt for lack of productivity. And I have been in this cycle of Zoloft need where I just feel guilty all the time. Maybe that's the Catholicism in me or something, but every time I'm productive, I feel so proud. I over reward myself. And then I'm so mad at myself for those moments that that productivity is fleeting. So that's my ice up pick tonight. DK, I know we put you on the spot here. Is there anybody now? Look, I've iced up a 15-year-old kid in Oklahoma I've never met before. So there are no rules to this other than I guess you're on the hook, but you can ice yourself. I've iced myself up. I've iced my family up. I've iced the Panthers up. You're free for all here. Do you have anybody that you would like to throw, or you can even celebrate somebody if you want?
No, I'll throw you one. It's I work a job to where I'm required to teach and train people how to do things, right? And that's my department. We do it. I want to ice up the rest of my entire department. And the reason is, I love them all to death. But when I come in and I have to go back behind people and do things, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Again, love them to death. But man, just shut up and do it. Do what you need to do and don't make people have to come behind you and do it again. If you're going to do it the first time, do it right. It's that simple.
Ice up. DK with the inaugural Dan Morgan icing up Scott Fitterer right there. It's now I got to clean up your mess. Thank you for your time and attention. This has been the C3 Panthers podcast. That's CK. That's DK. My name's Tony Dunn. We're going to be back here on Tuesday night, man. You guys know the number, know where you're at. You see those shorts, you see whatever it is, you hit share, and you just be part of the conversation. Guys, it was great hanging out. We're done.